Welcome to Budget Bike Build Hyosung 2.0. Now, as I talked about before in the previous episode, there's a reason why I went with a Hyosung, but we'll talk about that more in depth later. Today, we're going to talk about some of the upgrades that we're going to do to this Hyosung and why we're doing them. And here's the important thing to note. The fact that it's a Hyosung is almost completely irrelevant. What we're doing here is we're taking an entry-level bike that has an affordable price point to get in, that has a reasonable amount of horsepower, and has the ability to be upgraded to be made to work well in multiple situations. That means it works well on the street, and you can even make it work well on the track. So let's talk a little bit about what are some of the modifications we're gonna do. Again, this can be for any bike. It can be for a Ninja 650, SV 650, FZ6, any bike in this category. So the first thing we need to work on is suspension. Why suspension? Well, suspension is critical because first off, even the most expensive motorcycle may not be sprung or valved for you and how you're going to use it. Now, entry-level bikes, it's almost guaranteed that it's not going to be set up for the way you want to use it if you're going to push it beyond just going back and forth to the supermarket. So what we need to do here is look at what upgrades we need to do and how we're going to improve the ride of the motorcycle. Now, first of all, a lot of the choices with these entry-level bikes, suspension-wise, they may have reasonable components, but there's a cost factor here. They don't want an SV650 to cost $15,000. Okay, in order to do that, they have to cut corners. Same thing with a Hyosung. The reason why they could sell it for $5,500 brand new is that, or under $6,000 now, around there, is that they have to cut corners. Part of that is usually brakes, suspension, and some other components. But right now, let's talk about suspension. And one of the reasons why I chose the Hyosung. First of all, unlike a lot of the other entry-level bikes, a lot of them go with conventional damping rod forks. Now, damping rod forks are essentially 70s technology. Anything of that era, you're going to find old school damping rod, which is basically just a pipe that goes through, you have two chambers, the fluid goes from one chamber to another through orifices. The only way you tune it is by changing the size of the holes or the amount and viscosity of the oil. Not very tunable. So what are we going to do with that? Well, first of all, the Hyosung has fully adjustable front suspension other than preload. But we found a fix for that too. Now, more importantly to that, and this is the case on all of these bikes, the rear shocks are absolute garbage. But they just basically are adjustable for preload, and that's it. Okay, they're not even generally rebuildable. They're welded together. They're not made to be rebuilt or redone. Some of them you can get around it if you have a guy that knows what they're doing. So one of the things that we did is we went to Racetech on the original Hyosung, and they developed one of their G3S shocks. This is what is going into the new Hyosung, the 2014. This comes straight out of the 2005. Guess what? It fits. It's the same frame, same swing arm, same wheels. Okay, so I could take this. Now, is this a cheap piece? Is this inexpensive? No. But this is where your money should be going to. First and foremost, any bike you buy, the most important modification you can make to the bike itself is going to be suspension. This has high and low speed damping, okay? And it also has rebound and compression damping, as well as full, you can adjust your sag and your preload on your shock right here. You see the two collars on the shock itself. Very high quality piece of equipment. This is set to me and my weight, okay? I can tell you that there is no motorcycle made, no matter how much I spend for it, that is sprung properly for my weight, especially these entry-level bikes that are made for somebody about 150 pounds. So this is one of the units that's going into, this is going into the back of the bike. The front suspension, now it's already an upside down, adjustable for rebound and compression damping forks. But there's no preload adjustment. And it's essentially one of the things that we found out, at least in the 05, the parts for it are really off-the-shelf Honda F3 cartridges. They're basically, you could get gold valves and springs that would fit an old Honda F3. I guess they kind of pseudo-copied that, and so the parts were readily available. So that was actually the first modification we made to the original bike. But being that I'm a little bit bigger guy and I wanted to use it on the track, we actually went with a 25 millimeter cartridge fork. Okay, so we actually got the 25 millimeter cartridges. Those allow you a lot more fluid movement, a lot more tunability, and it really does just kind of stretch out the capabilities of the bike itself. It really does allow you to do a lot more tuning to it. So again, now this is not inexpensive. Okay, you're probably going to spend more for the suspension upgrades that I just talked about than I spent on the whole bike. I spent $2,000 on the whole bike used. You're probably going to spend around $3,000 at least for the suspension upgrades. It's worth it, because trust me, I know plenty of people that spend $40,000 for a Ducati and spend a lot more than that on their suspension. So this is still keeping it within a reasonable price, but improving the most important parts. That's the suspension. And we're going to get more into that as we show you how we're going to mount everything and the differences the suspension makes. Now, what's another area that really gets neglected on these budget bikes, on these entry-level bikes? Brakes. Okay, they're not putting radial mounted Brembo brakes on a $5,500, $6,500, $7,500, $8,500 bike. It's not happening. You're only seeing that in your over 10,000 and up bikes, even on a mid-size level. So what we're going to do is we're actually going to improve the brakes on this motorcycle. One of the things that we got a hold of, this is something that we never got to mount, is this Akasado Racing, okay, master cylinder. Now, this is a nice little piece here, okay? Again, not cheap, but this is going to help improve our stopping by quite a bit. So we're putting this on. So we are going to be switching everything over to steel braided lines, upgrading the brake pads, and at some point upgrading the front calipers using some used aftermarket units that are actually just off of another bike, but upgrading that as well. We're also going to try and put it on a diet. Okay, these bikes aren't that heavy, but weight is horsepower. Since I really don't want to do any modifications to the internals, I don't want to go into the motor and do anything. We are going to do some tuning and some external stuff, but I don't want to do any internal modifications to it. So the way we gain horsepower is by losing weight. The lighter you are, the faster it will go with the same amount of horsepower. So we're gonna do a few cost cutting or weight cutting techniques on the bike, and one of them that we're going to show you here in a second is the wheels. The wheels on these Hyosungs, don't ask me what they make them out of. They're supposed to be aluminum, but I think they put lead in them. I don't know. They're heavy, heavy, heavy wheels. So we figured out a way to actually mount some Ninja 650 wheels on there that we found used on eBay. We got a set of front and rear wheels with the rotors on it for under 200 bucks. And we're going to mount those with a much better set of rubber, better tires, because the OEM tires are kind of sport touring tires at best, and the ones that were on the original bike were from the original bike and are about 8 years old now. So we're going to upgrade to the Pilot Power 5s first. We'll probably try a few different tires while we go along, and then we're going to take it out and we're going to go see how much fun we can have and what we could do with the bike, and see what kind of limits we can push it to, especially with me on it. Again, somebody my size is going to ask a lot more of the suspension than somebody that's 140 or 150 pounds. And that's another thing we're going to work on. Want to add some horsepower? I need to lose some weight too. I know, trust me. So stay tuned to future episodes. We're going to get in depth into how we modify the bike, how we're putting parts on and off, what the actual process that we're going through, and what little pieces we're changing to improve things like ergonomics, and even just some stuff to make it look better. And watch for future episodes, because again, doesn't matter what you ride, all of these techniques are going to be relevant to you and your bike. Now don't forget to like this video, and of course subscribe to our channel and click that little notification bell so you can keep up to date with all the latest videos we post to our site.